Casper and Dennis here for Submission Radio, proudly brought to you by Musashi in some kind of war room.
The official Submission Radio war room.
That's right. Here with Robert Whittaker's coach, Fabricio Itte. I gotta say, you guys on Grange TV just do a phenomenal thing. I was gonna say, Fabricio Itte, aka Rob's coach from Grange TV, Fabs. And before we really get into it, obviously UFC 243 around the corner, gotta ask the burning question. Who is the better gamer between you and Robert Whittaker?
Rob by far.
But you've beaten him on occasion.
What is going on here, Fabs? Because I feel you're breaking character, and I don't know if I like it.
I'm just telling the truth, but the thing is that when it's time to shine under the lights, Rob doesn't have the intestinal fortitude and doesn't have the mind space, and I'm able to rise to the occasion and win
I love
when it
there's
matters.
a big fight coming up around the corner. we'll be asking you about what it's like to go out in front of a crowd and fight Israel Adesanya in a second. But he's not Fabs.
I just win when it matters. That's it.
So you're the champion. You've got the belt. That's all that matters. Grange TV, by the way, massive fans. We love what you do there. Talk us a little bit about what you think Grange has done for Rob, for him trying to get his personality out there, sort of connecting with the fans, and people getting to know him on a different level to what they've sort of known him from with interviews with us and sort of more PR kind of things that the UFC has done.
I just think, and this isn't good or bad, like I think we were talking before off camera, I think UFC is more after a particular archetype of person. And so when they interview or when stories are done or whatever, you can't really get to see who Rob is necessarily, because not because of anything good or bad, just the types of questions are kind of the type of media that's done. You can't really get to see who he is in embedded. It's very, very quick. You don't get to see it. Excuse me. But when you get to see it, then we would talk, like we'd be talking and okay, cool, let's do this podcast where we can just talk, just be who you are. And I think that's given him an avenue to just be able to speak, and then people that like that kind of person, that archetype, are able to see that more and able to connect with him in a different way. And that's all it's been. Really, I think it's allowed him to express his thoughts and his feelings about stuff, and fans and supporters to be able to see more of what Rob is actually like.
I'm just wondering, what do you think are a couple of misconceptions about Robert Whittaker? Because we've known him for a while behind the scenes and we know the depth of a guy that he is, but from your perspective, what do you think are a couple of public misconceptions about him?
Man, I'd rather you ask me, because I'll be honest with you, neither he nor I nor anyone really in the team lives in that public perception. So I
think people are saying like he doesn't talk trash, he doesn't like to do media, like people don't see the sort of personality that he has, or like how he likes to have a bit of banter with people, and that he's just like sort of they sort of see him more like not a robot, but just like someone that doesn't have as much emotion and that kind of stuff.
I know, also like we've labeled Rob as a nice guy. We always say that in interviews, and one time he sort of pulled us up on it. He said, I'm not really a nice guy just because I don't talk trash kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think, like, honestly, and I think he's a good person, but I don't think he's like a nice guy. I don't think, he's a nice guy. Christian here seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
But
that's a misconception.
see him, but Rob, no, I don't think he's a nice guy. I never think that. I think, like I said, like the kind of media that's done lends itself to a particular archetype of person. You know what I mean? So it doesn't. You don't get to see who he is. Like you can't. And so I don't know. If I ask you something that's got nothing to do with anything that you do, you're going to come off boring. You're going to give one-word answers. You're going to be like, I don't know, or thing. And so that's not who he is. So, the dude, like, to me, he's not a boring person, like, because I know him, and the stuff that interests me and interests other people wouldn't be boring. So he sets up we set up educational programs for remote Aboriginal communities.
The GAP program.
Yeah, the GAP program. So we're taking that mainstream. We want to move that into New Zealand and overseas as well. To me, that's not boring. Like, to me, that wanting to have that connection with, these old cultures and his own cultures that have been around for so long, and doing that through education and doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu as a conduit for education, to me, is not boring. I think the fact that he's got 3 kids, adopted his brother and sister, took him out of foster care. How the fuck is that boring? Do you get what I mean? If you like, I don't. To me, that's not boring. Like, I'm a fan of all the other fighters too. Like, I'm more outgoing, I suppose, than Rob. I'm not really that outgoing myself, but so I like the other fighters. I can think he's even less watches it. Do you know what I mean? So these are different things that if you look at that, you know, the guy also runs 2 gyms. You know, he owns 2 gyms as well, Gracie Atama and Gracie Smith and Grange. So when you look at that, I think if you're looking at that kind of stuff and you want to know about that as a person, great. If you want him to, I don't know, be something that he's not, and that doesn't make the other person or other people or that archetype, that doesn't make that wrong. It just means that that's not going to be that exciting for you, is it? Like, if you want me to talk about quantum physics, it's going to be a boring conversation because I can barely spell it. You know, so.
I think it's great that there's a guy like yourself who knows him so well and who sort of is able to bring that out of him, you know, on Grange TV. And I think it's also fascinating seeing Rob out of fights, say weeks out, months out from a fight, so easy, laid back. And then once he touches down on fight day, it's a totally different guy. Nice guy. I'm happy to label him as that. But I would say one of the most intimidating interviews during fight week. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, it's just that intensity. You can see it in his eyes during fight week. It's like a different human being.
Can I ask you, can you explain to me what you mean by most intimidating? I'm curious what you see.
When we have him on the show, like,
no, I'm just curious what you see.
Yeah, sure. He'll be sitting in a chair like this. He'll be kind of like swinging, like laughing a lot. And I feel like a lot of that laughter disappears during fight week. And it's almost like, if we're asking questions, there's a certain stare in his eyes that makes me feel like, oh God, I'm one of Rob's opponents. And I say that half jokingly, of course, but I just mean the intensity is turned up a lot during that fight week.
Yeah, I think he's...
It's just like no nonsense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's him in general. Like, I think he's a no-nonsense type of character in general, you know what I mean? I think that that's just who he is, you know what I mean? I think part of him growing up and maturing and becoming a man is him learning how to curb that and when to use that and when not to use it, and like when it's okay to have that stare. And also, I suppose, sometimes he might, you know, when he was younger, he might have that stare or that thing at the wrong time, you know what I mean? And it might make other people uncomfortable. So learning how to channel that inside him, because he's a born fighter. That's what he is. He's not a guy pretending to want to fight. He's not a guy pretending to be tough. He's not that. He's a born fighter, and he wants to fight. You know. So the hardest thing for him has been this layoff. You know, the hardest thing for him from a financial perspective, from a who he is perspective, has been to not be able to fight in these last, you know, not even 14 months, even. Like he broke his hand in between fights and that. So
to do the Ultimate Fighter over there.
Yeah, like to have that at the peak of your career, you know, and like you have to be strong up here as well. You know what I mean? It shows like all that stuff to me. Again, like you ask about boring and that. If that's the kind of stuff that interests you, then he's not boring. Do you know what I mean? If you want him to, I don't know, do something different, yes, okay, you're going to find that boring, of course. But if that's boring to you, then that's boring to you. I can't, like, cool. Like, I don't know, watch something else. Watch a soap opera.
You mentioned sort of like him coming back from some of the injuries and stuff like that. Do you think that in a sense this fight for him is like a comeback story? It's almost like a redemption story, which is kind of uncommon because he's the champ. He's the defending champ, right? But coming back from obviously what happened in Melbourne, you know, the long layoff, you know, I think there's still people out there that are kind of like, you know, we hope this fight comes through even days out. Do you think it's a bit of a comeback story for Rob?
Not really. Like, for us, in my opinion, Rob's opinion, our team, I think Israel's phenomenal, you know. You need no more motivation than to have to fight him. If that doesn't get you going, I don't know who else you want to fight. So it's not really, it's a next fight. This is a chapter in the whole story, you know. This is a small chapter in the whole story. We don't know, like, I don't know, say when he was fighting Uriah Hall at the time, or whoever, Brad Tavares, anyone. at the time, that was like the biggest fight at the time. And had he have won or lost it, we would have continued. And this fight with Israel, win or lose, the story continues, you know. So this is not a, like, it's just a fight, you know, for us. We know what's at stake, and we know how important it is, but it's not something that we think about like, oh, we got to prove ourselves, because we don't live in that world, you know. We don't live in that. If you listen to the critics and you listen and you read the comments and you go mad, dude. You guys wouldn't be doing submission radio because.
Oh, trust me, the comments under this interview, there's going to be a few.
Yeah, you know.
F this, F that. Why they annoying Fab with a stupid question?
Nah, everything. Like, do you know what I mean? Like everything. So you can't. If you listen to that and you live in that world, you wouldn't.
Do you keep him out of that world, or does he just stay out of it?
He genuinely, like, both of us, like, some people say, you know, this happened. Like, I honestly don't know. Like, I watch Israel's fights. I love watching his fights. I've always watched his fights. I watched his fights way before the UFC. But as far as like what's said and all of that, like, I genuinely, I don't care. He cares less than me, you know. And the other coaches the same. Like, we don't like, I don't know. We all got families. We all got. Do you get what I mean? Like, we all got different stuff.
But I also think it's funny because with Grange TV now you're more into, like, you have to be more across of what's happening in there.
No, the fights I am.
Yeah.
The fights have always been.
There's a bit of goss here and there. I see on Grange TV, like, you guys talk about, you know,
well, this guy,
like what we think about his performance, but then also like he made these comments about like this and that.
It'd be rare though.
Yeah.
It'd be rare. It'd be more.
But it must come across your desk from time to time, right?
People being like,
but like that kind of stuff, of course, yeah. But as far as like, no, I don't live in a cave. I have a phone, and the phone's connected to the internet and all of that. So like, no, not to that extent. But I'm saying, like, it's not like, I don't know. I have maybe 1,000 Instagram followers. Like, I have nothing. Like, I have no. No, there's no.
But you do have your own meme page.
Yeah, but that's not me. I don't run that.
You don't know who runs it.
Just set the record straight. There is a fan, a big Grange TV fan that does memes of Fab and Rob and stuff that happens in the episode. It's a great page. Check it out on Instagram, and it's got nothing to do with Fab. So there might be a stalker there. If he disappears before Sunday, follow the page. The answer is in the page.
I tell you the truth, man. I don't even know, like concept of doing a meme to me is ridiculously difficult. Like, if my wife will be watching this, to pay a bill online, she has to do everything. So I can't. I could not even grasp the concept of doing a meme, you know. Now, so like the talk and that, it doesn't really get to Rob, and also come Sunday night, it'll all be over. Like, do you know what I mean? It'll be done. Like, and Monday rolls on, like, and to be honest with you, it's not that important. It's two guys fighting in a cage. You're not curing cancer.
It's not personal.
Do you think this fight?
From whose perspective?
Well, from
Israel talking about stuff to do with Rob, you know, not being true to New Zealand, calling him things like a politician, and then it's trying to sort of get into his head during press conferences, probably more so than some of his previous opponents.
I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think so. I haven't, like, Rob hasn't said to me, oh, this is personal now, or something like that. I don't think so. Like, I don't, I don't, like, I don't know about any of that stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know that Israel has said anything that's been that bad, to be honest with you. Like, I don't. Like, he said some stuff like that about New Zealand or something, but I honestly don't see Israel as being like that rude or that bad. I don't think Rob does either. I think Israel is trying to sell the fight, my opinion. He's got a different personality to Rob, and he's saying what he's saying, but I actually don't think he's a bad guy. So, sorry to destroy this for everyone. You know what I mean?
We don't think he's a bad guy either, but I guess it's an interesting dynamic because, I mean, Rob has fought the best of the best, but every time they're, you know, super respectful and stuff like that. And then you've got Israel Adesanya, who, you know, talks about that, hey, like, I made Rob act a bit different, like with some of my talk like he was acting a little bit different. Like there's a whole mental side to this thing. And I think we spoke to Israel.
Do you think Rob's intimidated?
I don't think
he is,
Yeah.
but
we spoke to
Israel and Eugene yesterday, and they spoke about the fact that like they respect Rob, like he's super tough and stuff like that. So to me, it seems like it was an attempt to get into Rob's head through these press conferences and see how
I think
he
it's also
reacts to it.
promoting the fight as well. I think we're in that. I think it's more promoting the fight than personal, so to speak.
it's not
I
personal
don't
for
feel.
them.
Israel says
Yeah,
it's
I-
not personal.
I don't feel anything personal. You know what I mean? Like Rob doesn't either. I don't. To be honest with you, man, like if Israel wasn't fighting Rob, I'll go for Israel. Like I can't even pick a fight because I always go for the New Zealanders if it's not an Australian in there or
Doesn't
someone.
make you laugh because the UFC's trying to build up this
Dude,
Australia.
it's fucking stupid.
rivalry,
They
but
they were the
I don't understand
Anzacs.
what's going on.
Yeah, like the history of Australia and New Zealand is like the Anzacs. Yeah. So if someone from like Australia isn't fighting, or in particular someone like from Sydney, I always go for New Zealanders, unless it's someone like from the MMA powerhouse of Uruguay fighting.
You and our cameraman Christian, who's apparently a good guy, you know.
we started the MMA fight club in Uruguay. So unless it's like I always go for the New Zealanders. So I don't have like and the whole thing with like because I watch it and it says like two rival nations, and if I go overseas and I see New Zealanders, I'm always like, it's like I feel like they're Australians. You know what I mean? Like.
Russell Crowe, Mark.
Or I shouldn't say I feel like they're Australians. I feel like a New Zealander. I don't know. Like I don't.
We like to claim them if they've done well. And
Yeah,
like to claim us
100%.
from time to time as well.
Yeah, I don't feel that. I've never felt that like that kind of. I don't even feel like a friendly rivalry with them. To be honest with you, that's.
I think it's only sporting, and that's basically it, and the rest is just banter.
But
like
even-
jokes to fill time.
But with sporting, the rugby and the rugby league,
That's it. Yeah.
and like
It's not the All Blacks and the Wallabies this weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's
that's
still probably the only one, and it's not even that bad.
And I'm not even into footy. Do you get what I mean? I'm not into rugby league and rugby union that much, so I feel it even less. Like I like watching the haka, and then I'll probably turn it off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I only watch it really for the All Blacks when they do the haka. No offense to the Wallabies, but it's not an Australian New Zealand thing. I don't watch it. You know. So I love going to New Zealand. So that
We love New Zealand too
Yeah.
for so many reasons. I was going to say,
I wish I was more abrasive. I'm sorry, guys.
No. We want the real you. No worries.
Interesting point that Rob brought up with us in an interview when we asked him in hindsight, and even though like he lost a lot of money because he didn't fight Kelvin Gastelum, he spoke to you on Grange TV, and it was eye-opening about some of the sort of mental health that he went through. There's some of the mental health turmoil and some of the things that he dealt with going to the Kelvin Gastelum fight. Like he said, like he didn't really feel like going to the gym sometimes. And then when he spoke to us during an interview, he said that in hindsight, even though there was money lost, and even though he went through some of the scrutiny from the community for not making that fight on the day, it could be a blessing in disguise that he didn't step in there with Kelvin Gastelum. I'm just wondering from your perspective, how do you sort of assess the situation now that it's behind us? And even from putting the health aside, obviously he could have been seriously injured in that fight because what he had, the hernia, was very, very serious. But even from the performance aspect and from the camp leading into that fight, is it a blessing in disguise that fight sort of didn't end up happening?
So when are you asking me, is it a blessing in disguise that the fight didn't happen because of the mental health stuff?
Yeah, because he said the camp going into that fight, he wasn't that happy with some of the performance that he had in that fight. He felt like he was behind where he wanted to be. He was frustrated. So from the perspective of seeing, I suppose, the best Robert Whittaker and maybe not having the best performance on the night.
I think, first of all, mental health, I think it allowed Rob to see like the stigma it's attached to mental health is like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You have mental health, you do, I do, everyone does. Just where's it at? You know, like is it good or is it bad? Do you need to talk to someone? Do you not? But I think it was real hard for Rob as well, like with and I don't want to talk about it too much. It was him, not me, you know. Yeah. But as I think from a personal identity perspective of who he is, where we spoke earlier, like about like all the responsibilities he has, and who, he's also like that person that provides for everyone in that situation. So I think that for sure he sees himself as a strong figure that can't, and the job that he does, of course, he can't buckle. So understanding that, no, dude, you will, and you can, and that's fine. I think that helped a lot. As far as people criticizing Rob with the
hernia,
with the twisted bowel, with the thing, like most of those people, they wouldn't even got up to go to the letterbox with that. You know what I mean? Let alone fight. And Gastelum is no joke. You don't want to fight someone like Gastelum if you're not right. Because I'm sure he wouldn't want to kill you, but he probably will. So it wasn't a question. Like, it wasn't like, could he afford, and he pulled out. He didn't. It wasn't like they went to a hospital. They asked him, "Oh, do you want to fight?" And Rob said, "Oh, please, heavens no." No, he went to the hospital and they went straight to surgery. So it wasn't. And on the way to the hospital, we'd already said he's not fighting. That's it, done. Because he will still fight. He still wanted to fight, but there's no way in the world that we're going to let him fight and risk his health. There's no way. So before he'd even got to the hospital, before that, we were like, yeah, no, dude, if that's what's wrong and your stomach's like that, and he was like, no, I can still fight. What if there's nothing wrong? But you should have seen him. There were like no one. He was like curled over, throwing up, because like the bowel was twisted inside him. And they said to him, you have to operate right now because it can burst and become septic, and then that stays with you, and you can die from that as well. Wow. So that's irrespective of how do you fought. Like, because when people say, oh, if he fought, he could have died, it's like, no. He could have died if he didn't get the surgery. Do you get what I mean?
Yes,
like,
that's on another level.
So yeah, so for us, it's not like I was a blessing in disguise. No, it was like there was not that wasn't a choice. That was not from our doing. That was not from anyone's doing. So. Because I was going to say it would be irresponsible for us to let him fight. It would be beyond irresponsible. Yeah. You know what I mean? It'd be criminal.
He wouldn't even be able to make the walk down to the octagon in that state.
He was in hospital.
Yeah.
He was in surgery. He was in surgery. He woke up from surgery. We watched the fights. We watched Israel and Anderson. Me and him watched it in the hospital together.
What was that like?
That would have been so tough for him.
Oh no!
Like, how do you even enjoy a fight like that in Rob's
We watched
state?
it together. We watched it together on the phone like this, on my phone, watching the fight. Again, like there's it would be different, man. It would be different, I think. Like, of course, it's not easy. Financially, it hits him hard, right? But of course, it's not easy. But at the same time, there's you can take some sort of solace in the fact that it wasn't nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do about it. It was completely out of our control. It would be different if you said, "Oh, mate, you guys were grappling a day before the fight, and you ripped his leg out." That would be different. But no, it was a good fight, Israel and Anderson. We were just watching it. It was a good fight. It was. We're just talking about it, and. It's just interesting watching the back and forwards between the two fighters.
How do you prepare Rob for a guy like Israel? And I'm curious what you think, sort of from a coach's perspective, about his skills, his striking. He's sort of billed as a striker. I think there's a general consensus that people are saying, he might have the advantage in the striking. And do you feel like he is Rob's toughest opponent? I know you guys always have the mentality of every fight is the biggest fight. He's gone up. Rob's fought some really tough guys, obviously coming off the 2 wars with Yoel Romero. Is Israel the toughest test thus far?
Has to be, and it always is. He's a pick for you from me. I don't think this will be their last fight.
Whose last fight?
Between the two of them, I think they'll fight again at some point. I just think they're both young enough, and they're both at the top of the game. Don't get me wrong, there's some real, I'm not looking past the other guys, there's some real killers in that division too.
If he fought Yoel Romero twice, then surely he'll be fighting Israel a few times.
I just see that. I just think that they will fight again. I think that Israel, to me, has really underrated grappling and wrestling. He's got really, really good ability to grapple and wrestle. Like, he's no joke, like, in that respect. His striking, obviously, is phenomenal. like I said, I've watched him for a long time. Like I've known about him for a long time. How do we prepare for him? It's one of the big things you can't get caught up, I believe. Not just me, because we don't get stuck on that like nomenclature of who's the head coach or whatever. We got four, 5 coaches, and everyone has a different role, you know. And so there's Alex Pradas who's in charge of the grappling, Justin Fitzgerald is in charge of like the striking, primarily the boxing. Charlie Bashwadi does the Muay Thai. Justin Lang does all the exercise physiology stuff, and then there's myself. And I I have a teaching background, so I just kind of put the programs together. Mm-hmm. So no one has too much say over the other, you know. The other thing, it's a symbiotic relationship that's occurred. Like we all known each other, some of us 20 years. So you're able to work with a certain amount of congruency. So when you prepare for that, we do bring in certain people, but there's no one that can emulate Israel. No one's going to be him, you know. So you've got to concentrate on being the best Rob that you can be, you know. And you can get someone to come in and be Israel somewhat, you know, technically in that, but you can't get too caught up in that. We do have some guys we've brought in, but you can't get too caught up in it because in a fight, it's completely different. The biggest asset that Israel has, in my opinion, is his mind. He's had probably 100 fights all up. You know what I mean? A lot of sparring a lot of understanding and gamesmanship, you know, that he has, and he's able to do that at the top end. So if you can't, like, you can't emulate that. You know what I mean? So we just have to make sure that Rob can be the best Rob he can be in that fight.
You mentioned Alex Prates, and he did an interview recently, and he sort of labeled Rob as potentially like a GSP 2.0, saying that we haven't seen a ton of wrestling from Rob in his fights, but almost that's like his base. That he, maybe I'm wrong, but he almost alluded to like if that was a good like that could be a good style for him if he's able to take guys down and sort of, you know, ground and pound them kind of thing. Based on what you've seen from Rob in training, do you think that's a fairly sort of accurate assessment? And also, because I think a lot of people are expecting Rob to go for takedowns in this fight, and if the fight stays standing for, you know, however many rounds it lasts, do you think Rob can beat Israel on the feet?
I think of course he can. Of course he can. Of course Israel can beat Rob. Do you know what I mean? Especially standing up, you just have to land one on the chin, you know, and both these guys can do it, and both these guys have proven that they can. So of course they can. That's the first part. The second part is, will it go to the ground? Can Rob? Yes, of course he can. You know, of course Rob can do that. But it's so presumptuous, like, to say that he'll dominate Israel or that Israel will do this, because, man, I say this, like, say, for example, you prepare for Romero, you prepare for a southpaw, you prepare for a wrestler, you prepare for, if you watch the 2 fights, the way Romero fought the first fight, the way Romero fought the second fight, Romero comes out orthodox, doesn't wrestle, doesn't move, doesn't box, just stays there for 2 rounds, got his face broken, you know, like that cannot have been his game plan. He cannot have said, I'm going to go in there. He went in there and said, I'm going to go orthodox, but he didn't go in there and go, I'm going to go in there, let him break my orbitals, and then I'm going to hit him with the mother of all shots and have him rocked. And like, you know what I mean? It's very hard. We train for certain things. Can Rob take Israel down? I don't know. We train to, we hope to. Can he hold him down? Maybe, maybe not. Can he finish him? Maybe, maybe not. Can you finish him standing? Maybe, maybe not. We cover all those aspects, and we try not to laser in on any one thing. If you go in there going, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take Israel down, I'm going to hold him down, dude's going to frame, he's going to step aside, boom, hit you with big shots. He's going to time a knee coming in and hit you with an uppercut. He's like ambidextrous. He can change backwards, forwards, hit you from nowhere with no tell. So how are you going to say, I'm going to go and do this? Because he's going to be like, yeah, nah. And as soon as he can tell, as soon as Israel can tell what you're going to do, man, he's going to hurt you real bad. So Rob's got all those skills. He's got all the skills to do that, and then he has to go and fill that out in the fight as well. Is he capable of playing a GSP type game? Well, he's definitely got the wrestling. Like the guys that he's fought, like Jacare, Romero,
He was
Brunson.
supposed to be on the team for the Commonwealth Games, right?
Yeah, like he
Represent Australia.
100%. So, but you think of like Natal, Brunson, Jacare, and Romero, and count Romero twice. That's 5 fights almost in a row. That all those guys wanted that fight on the ground, you know. And Rob not only stopped it just by he didn't, you know, you don't stop all those 5 guys with sheer luck.
Yeah.
You know, it's just lucky that he didn't. And that was 10 rounds with Romero, so he can obviously wrestle, you know. But I don't take a lot from Romero to Israel because they're completely different fighters. You know, they are similar in that you can't let either one of them get their rhythm going, you know, in that regard. But other than that, you can't, like, yeah.
We'll let you go in just a sec, Fab. We feel greedy with your time and we don't want you to be too drained for Sunday. But I feel like there's this weird relationship going on between Jon Jones, Robert Whittaker, and Israel Adesanya. So on one side, Jon Jones kind of wants to train with Rob. He's a big Rob Whittaker supporter. On the other side, he looks like he's trying to gun for this Israel Adesanya fight. And then on the other side, when we spoke to Robert Whittaker, he said, hey, that Jon Jones fight, that's a fight that I'd like to have in the future as well. So what is your current relationship? What is your camp's relationship with Jon Jones? Have you guys actually had any conversation with him about potentially Rob going up there and training with Jon, potentially Jon coming down there and training with you guys? And also, is he a guy that you see in the future as an opponent for Rob? It's a bit of a big one.
Honestly, I'll answer it backwards. Yeah. The first thing is, right now we're just Israel, right? You know, I think a bit disrespectful to look past Israel. So I'm not going. There's only Israel right now, you know. The second thing is, as far as like training together and all that, I think that they've spoken, like they just spoke. You know, if they're around or whatever, but not just for this fight. I think there's been a couple of times where Rob's gone to Vegas, but Jon was somewhere else, or Jon came to Australia and Rob was somewhere else. You know what I mean? But never been like, I will bring you in to be Israel or something like that. No, it's never like that. But I think if like we went to the US and we wanted to go to Albuquerque, then I'm sure they could train together. That wouldn't be a problem. And yeah, so, but it was never like, all right, let's bring Jon in. And we've got some good guys like Izzy Fitikefu and Jacob Malkoun are fighting tomorrow night in Eternal MMA. And if they win their fights, man, they got to be close to signing. I'm sure. Like they have to be very, very. Izzy's got both belts in Australia. He's got he's right there to sign. And Jacob, like Izzy should sign very, very. He has to sign like the thing. And I reckon Jacob Malkoun's going to be top 10 in the world, and Izzy probably as well. But I'm just saying because he's about to sign. But Jacob, I think, will be top 10 in the world, and nobody's heard of him yet, Jacob Malkoun. But he'll be top 10 for sure. After that, I don't know what happens, you know, after the top 10. But so we've got, and then there's more guys at home, you know, that we all train together, and that congruency in a team is much more important, I think, than bringing in people that may not fit in the team.
Well, Fabs, we really appreciate your time, man. This has been like a mini Grange TV
Guys.
episode. Obviously, the big fight, Robert Whittaker taking on Israel Adesanya, UFC 243 this weekend, and I'm sure we'll be chatting to you post-fight. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.